So I'm hearing we have a possible trial date set for, I think I heard March, whenever like that. So in this video here, man, Trump's lawyer has just previewed what Trump will say if he is found guilty. All right, let's get to it.
But we will cover the legal news of the day
March
sequentially,
4th.
meaning
March 4th. It says Trump trial set for March 4th in federal election case. March 4th.
we will begin with the 10 a.m. hearing in Washington, D.C. in the courtroom of federal judge Tanya Chutkan, where she set a trial date of March 4th for the case of the United States of America versus Donald J. Trump. We do have a full transcript of that hearing this morning, and it ended with what will be the first words of defendant Donald Trump's appeal of the case if he is found guilty. After listening to Donald Trump's lawyer, John Lauro, argue for a 2-year delay, more 2.5-year delay of the trial, and listening to prosecutor Molly Gaston with her boss, Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, looking on, Judge Chutkan said, I find that a trial beginning on March 4th, 2024 would give the defense adequate time to prepare for trial and ensure the public's interest in seeing this case resolved in a timely manner. I realize that Mr. Trump's criminal case in New York is scheduled for trial on March 25th. I did speak briefly with Judge Merchan to let him know that I was considering a date that might overlap with his trial. A trial start date of March 4th, 2024 gives Mr. Trump 7 months between indictment and trial, which I believe is sufficient time to advise with counsel and prepare his defense. The trial will start.
Now, as we already heard, though, his defense is saying, nah, not enough time. We need 2 years and some change. What do y'all think? Do y'all think that's adequate enough time? Or do you think this is a smart tactic by his attorneys? What do you think is going on? What type of game is being played right now? Because once they start setting dates and stuff like that, the games begin. And I don't mean it in a literal sense of this is a game or this is a joke. I'm just saying the game of the defense, their whole way of going about trying to free him of these charges starts. So what do you think? You think that's the first tactic? That's the first play? That's the first part of the game plan that Trump's lawyer is doing? What do y'all think?
Start 3 years, 1 month, and 27 days after the events of January 6th, 2021. After the judge said that, Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer, John Lauro, made a statement which contains the first point Donald Trump will raise if he is found guilty in this case and he appeals that verdict. The lawyer told the judge on behalf of President Trump, we will certainly abide by your Honor's ruling as we must, but we will not be able to provide adequate representation to a client who has been charged with serious offenses as a result of that trial date. The trial date will deny President Trump the opportunity to have effective assistance of counsel in light of the enormity of this case. I feel I need to put that on the record so there's no doubt that in our judgment, that trial date is inconsistent with President Trump's right to due process and his right to effective assistance of counsel under the Sixth Amendment. And joining us now is Neil Katyal, former acting U.S. Solicitor General and professor at Georgetown Law School. He has argued 50 Supreme Court cases. He's an MSNBC legal analyst and host of the podcast Courtside with Neil Katyal. Neil, I wanted the country's foremost appeals practitioner to start us off tonight because when I read that transcript, I saw right there that John Lauro was making, in effect, writing the first lines of the appeal if Donald Trump is convicted in this case. What do you make of that as an appeal issue? The notion that they only had 7 months to prepare for trial, so Donald Trump was denied adequate counsel.
Yeah, it's certainly, Lawrence, an appeal issue. It's just not a very good one, ultimately. As you mentioned, I used to run all of the federal government's appeals and defend prosecutions when I headed the Solicitor General's office. And, you know, these kinds of appeals are filed day in and day out, and they are routinely rejected every time. And I think here there's a very important principle, which is a need for a speedy trial because justice delayed is justice denied. And these kinds of tricks to try and delay.
See? Strategy. I knew that out the gate, that's part of their game plan and strategy. So I don't think they're just trying to, oh, please just give us more. No, this is all strategic, bro. We about to see a whole game plan be played out right before our eyes and to see who has the better strategies. And it's already started.
Things, don't go over well, particularly when you're dealing with a very careful, well-respected judge like Judge Chutkan, who listened, beyond all patience, in my mind, with what the Trump lawyers were saying to delay the thing until 2026, which was just absurd. But she listened to it. She gave them a little bit of credence and gave them a few more months. But at the end, Lawrence, she said, this show has to get on the road. And it reminded me of the George Floyd case in which I was special prosecutor. And Officer Derek Chauvin made the same request for delaying the trial. There were 30 gigabytes of data, didn't have enough time. His lawyers couldn't provide an effective defense. And we explained to the judge that this was an adequate amount of time, and the judge rejected it. And that is not a strong appeal issue and never has been. And I think the same thing is true here.
As I've expressed before, I for one, have real sympathies for the Trump defense team argument that this is a massive amount of discovery material to process. And there was a point in the transcript where John Laros recalled the days, the pre-digital days, when he said, there might be 50 boxes of documents in the room and you'd sit down and you'd go through every one of them. That's the kind of discovery that I understand. I do not understand this computerized discovery with millions of pages and how the judge basically agreed with the prosecution, not as strongly, but agreed with the prosecution that really you don't have to sit down and go through every piece of paper, turn every page that way. There's a way of searching. But I have to say, I was impressed with the size of the burden that the defense counsel described.
So, Lawrence, those of us in the 21st century, let alone the 20th, we're used to this kind of discovery. There's all sorts of automated ways to do this. And so there are a lot of pages. That's because there's a lot of duplicates. And here, Jack Smith's team explained a lot of these pages are actually pages that are Donald Trump's pages. They've been in his possession for 3 years. They're not being turned over for the first time. And, the Trump lawyers made a whole bunch of kind of outrageous claims. Like they said, the average length of a RICO prosecution or conspiracy prosecution is really long, but they didn't tell the judge that their data was cooked, that basically it included all of the COVID era delays. And so, that's something Jack Smith pointed out. And basically, it was a kind of devastating hearing, I think, for the Trump team, because they basically kind of walked into this courtroom of a very well-respected federal judge. They tried to have like a My Cousin Vinny moment, and it totally failed on them. And that's why I do think, to the extent they try this as an appeal issue, it's just not going to work. The judge was really careful today in what she did.
Yeah, one of the things that was funny in the transcript is one of the cases they cited as having a longer, where they suggested there was a longer discovery period, was actually one of Judge Chutkan's own cases. So she knew it very well. She knew what was involved. She said there were plea negotiations involved that delayed it. There were a bunch of things involved, unrelated to discovery, that delayed the trial date there. So Donald Trump reacted to this today, saying, among other things, today a biased Trump-hating judge gave me only a 2-month extension, meaning 2 months longer than what the prosecution was asking for. How long will Judge Chutkan allow Donald Trump to be, in effect, attempting to poison the jury pool by saying things like a biased Trump-hating judge?
Yeah, I mean, that's the million-dollar question. I have to say my hat's off to Judge Chutkan for having such a thick skin and not doing anything so far. But at some point,
I was just about to say, but for how long? How long are you going to let certain things like that fly? Not even for just Trump's side, but either side. Like, you don't want this to become a mockery. You surely don't want him inciting anything. You don't want any of that type of stuff being brought to this courtroom. at all. You don't want that type of thing surrounding it. Now, some stuff is going to be inevitable, and I'm pretty sure they understand that, and they will have the proper resources there to make sure everything is safe for the public and people that will be there, because this is going to be a huge spectacle. I'm anxious to see that type of stuff. I would expect for them to kind of nip in the bud pretty quick, because you don't want this thing to get out of hand. And we've seen it get out of hand before.
Point, this is America's most important trial, certainly in our lifetimes, if not in the nation's history. It's certainly up there. And the idea that a criminal defendant can poison things this way, I think, is really, really dangerous and destructive. And I think Trump is gambling on the fact that federal criminal trials are generally not televised. So he can go and bloviate and attack the judge right now, and he'll do so during the trial too. And the American people won't see this federal criminal trial taking place against Donald Trump unless the Chief Justice and the Judicial Conference authorize cameras. And I think every time Donald Trump opens his mouth and attacks the judge, attacks this prosecution, I think that's just another exhibit for why this trial needs to be televised and every American can see it.
I would be surprised if it won't, if it isn't. You know what I mean? And that's ultimately their decision. But man, this will be one of the biggest. The one I can always go back and recount to is OJ. This will be bigger than that, I think. What do y'all think? Yeah. They're probably going to have this thing televised. If they don't, I'd be surprised.
That is one of the points that Molly Gaston, the special prosecutor from Jack Smith's office, said today. She said, because on a near daily basis, the defendant posts on social media about this case. He has publicly disparaged witnesses. He has attacked the integrity of the courts and of the citizens of the District of Columbia who make up our jury pool. And this potentially prejudices the jury pool. And then, of course, Donald Trump immediately goes and does again what she said he is doing. The judge said before the lawyers even spoke that Donald Trump, by the way, is also complaining that this scheduled start is the day before Super Tuesday and the presidential campaign primary schedule. The judge said, I want to note here that setting a trial date does not depend and should not depend on a defendant's personal and professional obligations. Mr. Trump, like any defendant, will have to make the trial date work regardless of his schedule. She compared scheduling this to scheduling a criminal trial.
So that right there is also drawing a line in the sand.
Trial date for, say, a professional athlete. You cannot take the professional athlete's schedule into consideration when you're doing that.
That's exactly right, Lawrence. I mean, if Donald Trump doesn't want to have his trial start the day before Super Tuesday, the simple solution is don't commit crimes so that you're facing a criminal trial the day before Super Tuesday. You don't get some special dispensation because you're Donald Trump. I know that's the way he's used to rolling, but I think justice is now catching up with him. And with respect to what the Jack Smith prosecutor, Molly Gaston, said today about Trump's, intimidation of witnesses or poisoning the jury pool or the attacks on the judges, this is a slam dunk appeal argument for the federal government, for Jack Smith. When Donald Trump, as you say he will, tries to appeal his criminal conviction on the grounds that he didn't have enough time to prepare, the government will start its brief by saying, this schedule is entirely of your own making. You're the one who shot off your mouth and tried to poison the process. And that is what the judge warned you. She said, if you do that, I'm going to move the trial date up. And it wouldn't shock me if the judge moved it up even further in response to if Trump keeps opening his mouth in this way.
Donald Trump also said, I will appeal, meaning I will appeal the trial date, which I've never seen that before.
Well, good luck with that. I have seen it. I've never seen it successful. And that is because the standard is a standard called mandamus. It's the highest standard in the federal courts for an appeal. And, we could walk in when I was in the federal government, blindfolded with our hands tied behind our back and win those mandamus appeals. And certainly in this circuit, the D.C. circuit, our nation's second highest court, there is no chance that this is going to be a viable appeal. So good luck with that, Mr. Trump. Your trial date is March 4th, 2024. We'll all be watching.
Marjorie, have you had any communication with the former president at all today?
Yes, of course. I'm in constant communication with him. I support President Trump. I just came from the Republican debate in Milwaukee last night, landed here this morning. The reason why I'm here is because this is my home state. I was born and raised in the state of Georgia, and I'm here as a Georgian. I'm also here as a member of Congress. We're going to be standing up against the weaponized government. We're launching an investigation into Fani Willis through the Judiciary Committee, and we go back into session.
Last question about Fani Willis. You know that she did get the approval for the trial date to be moved up. Do you have any comment on that?
My comment to Fani Willis is we're going to make sure that she loses her job.
What do you think she's done wrong? What did she do wrong?
This is called weaponized government.
What does that mean?
The weaponized government is she's using her office for politics.
Okay, so
she's going after Joe Biden's top political opponent.
So you don't think
going
Trump
to win the
made any of
Republican
these?
primary? No, these are fake charges. Why? He's being arrested because he uses freedom of speech. He's not allowed to say what he thinks and feels about his 2020 election. He didn't break the law. Joe Biden broke the law.
Do you have any concern?
Joe Biden
Do you have any concerns that any of the other 19
over 50 years using people just like you,
not like me.
tens of millions, yes,
Like
just
you.
like you.
Not
No,
like
you
me.
probably voted for him. That's
No,
your
I
president.
Do you have any concerns that any of the people?
Yo, oh my God. Bro, can we just step aside and look at ourselves at how combative we're being? Like, she could have totally proved her point, but she is being so combative to go at people. And I get it. You know, your frustrations are high because of what you believe. And I'll never tell you to change your beliefs or who you believe in and what you believe is going on. But look how we're looking, man. This just looks so bad to me. The optics of the whole situation just looks bad, man. And this brings out the worst in people.
People that are indicted are going to take any deals in this case?
I don't know. Those are questions for their attorneys, but I think it's shameful. These people are having to pay for attorneys, have to defend themselves. They're having to be the victim of the weaponized government happening here in Georgia, and our state legislature needs to do something about it.
Has the former president asked you to be his running mate, or have you had any conversations with him about that?
The president will pick who he chooses for his running mate. Right now, I'm serving Georgia's 14th congressional district.
Think you still endorse President Trump?
Yeah.
The president's feeling outraged. He's the victim of the weaponized government. This should not be happening. You know, the Democrat Party should be able to run on their own policies, and their policies right now are nearly $4 a gallon gasoline. Their policies right now, they've doubled food prices with inflation. Their policies right now are wide open borders where drugs, over 300 fentanyl deaths every single day in America. Here in our state, over 250% increase in fentanyl deaths. That's Fani Willis, everybody. That's what she's doing. She's not prosecuting these crimes.
Fani
Can't
Willis
you
is
just fight
bringing
this in court?
fentanyl into the country.
Yeah, you're saying they're weaponizing the government, but he can just fight this in court if it's
Why should he? No, why should he?
Shouldn't every person have their day in court, though?
Why should he even be in court? Why? Because he said my election was stolen? Is that a crime? Hillary Clinton said the same thing. Guess what? Stacey Abrams said the same thing right here in Georgia when she ran for governor. And every single Democrat all came out and said the elections were stolen. The elections were stolen. Did anyone see?
What about Brad
did anyone see
Raffensperger,
charges
though?
brought
Brad
against Hillary
Raffensperger,
Clinton?
he
Were
has
there
straight up
charges
said that there
brought
was no
against
issues
Stacey
in our,
Abrams?
like, or
I'll
what
tell
is
you,
Brad
no,
Raffensperger?
I'm sorry. We had to hire an attorney and do a FOIA request because my ex-husband was told that he voted by absentee ballot. You guys look this up. This is in the news. He was told when he showed up to vote in 2020 that he voted by absentee ballot, and he said, "No, I didn't. I didn't even request one." And then he had to sign an affidavit to surrender an absentee ballot that he never voted on. And we were accused and called liars for that until we hired an attorney and we had to FOIA the information. And guess what? It turns out it was all true, exactly what he said. So there was fraud in the election, and it's a serious issue. And I don't care.
It's a lot of fraud, and it's a lot of things going on, and a lot of pieces moving, man. And it's this. You just don't know what to believe anymore, man.
You're Republican or Democrat, you should
Do you
care
expect
about
to
your
see him
elections.
today?
Have you spoken with
You
Trump
say you've
today?
spoken with him. Do you expect to see him?
President Trump will be coming in for this shameful event, and then he'll be leaving. And I don't blame him. I'm sure he'll be ready to go.
What do you think about the debate yesterday? Vivek Ramaswamy.
I thought Vivek did a good job. He actually stood up for America First policies, and he was the only one on the stage that made any sense. The rest of them sounded like George Bush Republicans.
So is Vivek 24 or VP Vivek?
Do you still endorse Trump?
I'm Trump 24. Trump
right.
24 all the way.
To his supporters today.
I'm
How
sorry.
about
Will he speak to his supporters? They're asking if their Trump is going to speak to supporters.
VP Vivek.
Yes, I'll be.
He says yes. She says yes.
This is all bad, man, and it's only gonna get worse, man. So prepare yourself. We're gonna go through this thing slowly, all right? Slowly.